Support for the Brülosophy podcast comes from the following. Love to Brew is a national leader in homebrewing supplies, offering exclusive products such as East Coast yeast, TV taps, and Brülosophy recipe kits, all with free shipping on orders over $75. When you need brewing ingredients or equipment, check out Love to Brew at love2brew.com. The best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world. Find everything from classics to modern favorites, as well as cool experimental varieties and a vast array of ingredients and gear at yakimavalleyhops.com. Good day, mates. Today on the Brülosophy podcast, that was terrible.
That was really terrible.
Okay. Well, the reason I faked an Australian accent is because the topic of today's show that Matt Del Fiacco and I are going to be talking about is the no-chill method.
Yeah, no-chill brewing. I'm really excited to talk about this. It's one of the more novel methods out there that has gained, quite a following.
So I've heard it referred to as no-chill brewing, which is difficult for me because it's not really a brewing method. It's a wort chilling method.
Yeah, no-chill brewing is specifically around how you chill the wort after you finish your boil, and has some pretty strong roots in a couple different areas.
Yeah, and there's a long history we're going to get into later about how no-chill brewing was developed. Obviously, it's a really simple method that and we'll talk about different ways that you can get into no-chill brewing and whatnot. But chilling wort is one of those components of the brewing process that is actually pretty important. A lot of people take it quite seriously. I know for me, it was something that I focused on mostly as a kind of a time issue. I hated how long it would take for me to chill wort. And, I did my own experimentation and poking around. I ultimately settled on immersion chillers. And after exploring different options, and I found the Jaded Brewing, Hydra, and King Cobra, and those wort chillers are allowing me to chill my wort very quickly. I think one of the important things about being able to chill wort is that you want to stop the isomerization process so that you're not creating a beer that's more bitter than you're planning. And at the same time, you want to drop that wort down as cool as possible so that you can get it, into the fermenter soon enough so that it reduces the risk of contamination.
Yeah, and there's a lot to chilling actually that we're gonna go into a little bit more in depth later, but chilling is also one of those things that we as homebrewers tend to not pay a ton of attention to outside of the fact that chilling without a chiller can take an incredibly long time. I think like most brewers, when I started brewing, I chilled by putting my closed kettle with a lid in a bathtub or in a bucket with a bunch of water, and it would still take, quite a long time. And even some immersion chillers, I've had some, maybe 30 minutes of cooling time based on the batch size.
Right. And there's a lot of downsides to, with every, upgrade in your chilling process, there's going to be some sort of a sacrifice. For example, using the types of chillers I think most homebrewers are using, whether that's plate, counterflow, convoluted counterflow, or immersion chiller, you are using quite a bit of water. And so that was one thing that went into the development of no-chill brewing. And so that, there's a lot to consider when it comes to chilling wort. And I'm looking forward to getting into this. We've got some cool little experiments that we've done on no-chill brewing. One of them, a local friend of mine, went an entire year using the no-chill method without telling us, his local friends, about it. And we drank the beer and gave him feedback throughout that. And we're going to talk about his experience as well as ours. But first, we've got some stuff we want to let you guys know about. Brew Your Own Magazine is going to be hosting their only boot camp of 2018 in the very beery city of San Diego, California. It goes from February 2nd to 3rd. Classes are going to be taught by the likes of Gordon Strong, Mitch Steele, and Mike Tonsmeyer. There's absolutely no doubt this is going to be an incredibly educational event, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun as well. If you register before December 15th, they're going to take $100 off the price of the 2-day option. And even better, if you write in Brülosophy at checkout, they're going to throw us a little bit of love for sending you their way. So that's the Brew Your Own Magazine Boot Camp of 2018 in San Diego, California. Save $100 by registering before December 15th. You can find the link just by Googling Brew Your Own Boot Camp 2018. Quick reminder, if you live in any of the following cities, we'd love for you to reach out to us and let us know if you want to participate in some experiments and just kind of be a part of the data collection process for Brülosophy. We've got people in Chicago, Illinois, Denver, Colorado, Pueblo, Colorado, Anchorage, Alaska, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, Corona, California, and I live right here in Fresno, California. If you want to contribute to brewing science, like I said, reach out, Marshall@Brülosophy.com. We'll get you hooked up with the contributor you live closest to. If you have a question for our Brew and A episodes, we're always collecting that stuff and compiling these lists. We will be recording the second Brew and A episode in the next couple of weeks. You can email me those questions at Marshall@Brülosophy.com, or you can drop them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or any of the other online forums we frequent. Real quick, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who has been supporting Brülosophy and the Brülosophy podcast. It has allowed us to plan on moving to a weekly production schedule, which I mentioned in the last episode. And without your support, without the support of the sponsors who are out there who believe in what we do, we wouldn't be able to do that. So if you are looking for a way to throw some support our way, head over to Brülosophy.com/support, where you'll find a list of links to use when you shop at places like Amazon, More Beer, Adventures in Homebrewing, Love to Brew, and all of the other online homebrew shops. You won't feel a thing. We get a small kickback that helps us to keep bringing you these shows. If you want a little something in return for your support, you can head over to Patreon, where for as little as $1 per month, you'll be granted access to never before published Brülosophy recipes, receive invites to monthly video chats, and you can even work with us to design your very own experiment. That's patreon.com/Brülosophy. I think there's something like, we're pushing 20 never before published recipes that are up on the site. And if you sign up, when you sign up now and your first payment goes through, you're going to get access to all of those past recipes as well. So it's a pretty cool deal. And every little, contribution counts. Trust me, it really does matter. So also, if you could please make sure to subscribe to the Brülosophy podcast on wherever it is you listen to your podcast, and especially leave a review. We would really appreciate it. Not only does it give us good feedback that we do use to influence the way we do these shows, but it's good for potential sponsors and stuff as well. And we try to keep our sponsors only the folks that we believe in and want you to hear about. So that's where we're at. Thank you all for the support. Again, we very much appreciate it. All right, now it's time for the 1-minute beer review. And for this one, I got to be honest, I kind of approached it from the same perspective Jersey and Tim did. Even though I knew what the beer was, they had no clue. I've never had this particular beer before. It's Founder's Doom Barrel-Aged Imperial IPA. Somebody left a bottle of it at my place, probably assuming I was going to, sit around a campfire or something like that and drink this and really dig into it. But instead, I thought it would be fun to serve it to my friends. I will share my impressions after their review, but I would like to read to you what Founders has to say about this beer. Doom may be impending, but that doesn't mean you have to fear it. A collision of worlds. The intense hop character of our Imperial IPA mingles with the warm vanilla and oak notes imparted from the time spent in our favorite bourbon barrels. Like all good things, doom comes to those who wait.
1-minute beer review with Jersey and Tim. All right, go ahead. You first. I better know how you think it tastes.
Oh, it tastes awful. It is not good.
All right, I'm going to drink it all in one sip and tell you exactly how it tastes afterwards.
No way, dude. Oh my God.
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
It's terrible. It's horrible.
You just drank an entire glass of horrible beer.
It's going to be a while until I can tell you exactly how it tastes because I don't remember. It tastes like...
Kind of tastes like a candle.
Yes. That stupid Canyon Company candle stuff that your wife has around the house and you're like, I'm going to move it, but it's not dry and it spills everywhere. That's what it tastes like.
It does not taste good at all.
It does not taste good. I would not write a song about it.
Want to hear it? Here it goes.
I would love to hear it, Timmy Tim. Let's hear it.
This is not good.
It's not good. Nope, it's not good.
I
mean, I'm running out of adjectives.
don't even want to drink it.
Give it to me. I'll drink it. Give it to me.
You finish that off.
I'm going to pour it out of this beautiful bullet-looking Brülosophy glass, and I will drink it for you. It tastes taste like?
Well, I suppose it's not too surprising that Jersey and Tim weren't big fans of a highly hopped, highly alcoholic, barrel-aged, beer. It didn't surprise me one bit. Interestingly, I have to agree on some level that I wasn't a huge fan of this. Now, I forget what year this was. I think it was a fresh version. I think it was like a 2017 bottle of Doom. I'm not sure my mind knows how to process the concept of a highly hopped Imperial IPA that's been barrel aged. Is that something you're into?
You know what? I'm not a huge hop person in general. I don't drink a ton of IPAs. But that said, part of me wonders how they went about the process. Like if they did a long barrel aging and then they did a big dry hop before. I'm sure some people might argue that you're supposed to be aging that beer a little longer and maybe the bitterness will die down a little bit. But, I'm a huge barrel aged fan and I'm a huge big beer fan. So I really want to believe, like I want it to be a thing. It's the only thing I can think of is like, maybe I could do this. Like I could do a barrel aged IPA and I might give it a shot, but, I think there's a lot to it. And I think with a lot of flavors from the hops and a lot of flavors from the barrel, especially, with a bourbon barrel, you're muddying the waters quite a bit there. There's a lot of flavors that are taking part in that process.
Yeah. I felt like my mind was constantly trying to pick up the more, I guess kind of, barley wine aspect of it. I wanted that malty, that really round maltiness, and the hops just kind of got in the way of that. I didn't hate the beer; it was fine. But for 10%, give or take, ABV beer, I would rather have had something else. But hey, you know what? It is what it is. It's got really good ratings on Rate Beer and Untapped and all of that stuff. So go out and find yourself some Founders Doom Barrel-Aged Imperial IPA. See what you think of it for yourself. If you would like to have your homebrewed beer featured on the 1 Minute Beer Review with Jersey and Tim, email me, Marshall@Brülosophy.com, and we will get you all set up. All right, we got to head to a break. And when we come back, Matt and I are going to be digging into what no-chill brewing is and some experiments that we've done on the topic. Stick with us. After a long brew day, the last thing I want to do is waste time chilling wort, which is why I use cleverly designed immersion chillers from Jaded Brewing. After some bad experiences with counterflow and plate chillers, I began the search for a more efficient chilling solution and discovered Jaded. That was nearly 4 years ago, and to this day, I continue to rely on the King Cobra and the Hydra to chill my wort in record time without the setup or cleaning hassle of other chillers. If you're looking for a way to optimize your brew day, I can't recommend Jaded chillers enough. Go see what they have to offer at jadedbrewing.com and let them know Brülosophy sent you. Founded in 1978 by brewing pioneer Charlie Papazian, the American Homebrewers Association is a division of the Brewers Association focused specifically on protecting and promoting the hobby of homebrewing. In addition to their work lobbying for the rights of homebrewers across the country, they're also the primary sponsor of Brülosophy.com. By joining the AHA, not only are you supporting their cause, but you get a ton of benefits as well. Discounts at breweries across the U.S., early access to tickets for events like the Great American Beer Festival, and you get to attend HomebrewCon, the world's biggest gathering of homebrewers. Head over to Brülosophy.com/AHA now to sign up to become a member. No-chill brewing. What exactly is this?
So no-chill brewing is the practice of transferring hot wort into a sealed container and then letting it sit until it is at your pitching temperature, and then transferring transferring the wort into a fermenter for fermentation.
So by no chill, it's not that we're not chilling the wort. It's going to chill naturally. Basically,
Yes.
Basically what it means is no mechanical chilling. We're not using anything but the air that is present all the time to chill this wort, which means that it's going to require a lot of time.
Yeah, and you can definitely, it might be easier to think about, instead of saying like no chill brewing, we could probably just say slow chill brewing, that where,
TM.
Yeah, on a t-shirt near you.
Yeah.
But then, so obviously, no-chill containers are usually HDP plastic cubes or something that can withstand boiling temperatures. I've heard some of people using stainless steel kegs. People who are using obviously the plastic containers is kind of the classic no-chill container. And then, I mean, obviously you don't want to use glass. Glass will shatter.
Yeah.
But as you use, when you transfer to that vessel, letting it sit over time, and then just doing it. So it's a really, really quick way of shortening your brew day. And you don't need to wait that period of time for if you're using an ice bath or if you're using a different kind of chiller. It's pretty quick just to run that liquid right into a vessel.
Right. The biggest difference being that you're pitching your yeast quite a bit later than you might normally with a mechanical chiller of some sort. I've heard a few different stories about where no-chill brewing comes from. And, you said that you've done some research on the history of this. I know there's not too much out there.
I have. And so, yeah, you're right. Like there isn't a lot out there. And I think there's probably a couple reasons for that that we'll get into a little bit later. But really, more often than not, like how you really poorly started this podcast with your accent, is that we actually attribute no-chill brewing to Australian homebrewers. And part of the problem was that during periods of drought, or just for a need to conserve water, that you would otherwise be using to chill the wort, utilizing an immersion chiller, or I'm using the exBEERimator, which is like a counterflow chiller, or just a plate chiller. Like obviously a lot of those things will utilize water in order to bring the temperature of wort down quickly by transferring water out of some kind, or in or out of, depending on the kind of chiller you have, essentially around the wort, but it's not in direct contact. Obviously we don't want to dilute the wort at all. And then using that to create a really, really quick, rapid cold break, which we chill the wort really, really quickly and get it into that fermentation vessel pretty much as soon as possible, and get our pitching rates. But that process utilizes a lot of water. So if you have a less efficient immersion chiller or a smaller immersion chiller for your batch size, you might be running water for 15 minutes. You might be running water for 20 minutes. If you have a counterflow chiller like I do, or one of the immersion chillers, then obviously you're going to be utilizing a little less water. It takes me about 5 minutes usually to chill down from boiling temperatures to pitching temperatures, depending on the temperature of my groundwater. But it also, I am still running that water for 5 minutes. So there's a lot of water usage in traditional chillers.
Yeah, I've done some measurements, and I've these days I'm pretty much exclusively using the Jaded Brewing's King Cobra, which is a highly efficient, well designed immersion chiller, copper immersion chiller. The thing is, as cool as my groundwater might be, it still requires a good amount of water to get my wort down to the point where I'm comfortable racking it into a fermenter. And even then, I still have to rely on letting it chill for a bit in my chamber before I pitch yeast. So my understanding and what I've heard about no chill is that it really was kind of designed out of necessity. Folks living in areas where water is, you can't just waste it the way some people are capable of doing. I don't mean to use the word waste, but so they
it is wastewater.
Yeah, good point. But yeah, so that was really the kind of the impetus behind developing the no-chill method. It was neat. When I was over in Australia back in March of this year, I was hanging out with a bunch of brewers, a bunch of home brewers, and the way, copper immersion chillers are popular here, no-chill brewing is really popular over there. And you've got these people who use what they refer to as cubes, or I think they're called jerry cans.
Jerry cans, yeah.
Yeah, and they really are. They're kind of this cube-shaped, opaque HDPE plastic that has a really solid seal on the top. And what they'll do is they'll take that hot wort just post-boiling, rack it right into a cube, cap it, and they fill it to the very top, to where it's basically coming out over the top of the lid there. They screw on the lid and they store it, in their laundry room until it's cool. And I was talking to some dudes over there who are they're making 4 or 5 batches of wort on a weekend, and then they've got these worts that are just lined up and in on a shelf in their laundry room or in a closet somewhere, and they just pull it off when they want to ferment, and that's their thing. And it's kind of neat. It's an approach that I don't think many people here in the States are practicing. But it seems that, they speak very highly of it.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting because I've never even heard that before. Like when we hadn't talked about that, like that, having a couple vessels of wort around that you can, ferment later, like depending on when you have time. And it actually makes a lot of sense because that's one of the great benefits of no-chill brewing is obviously that if you pump boiling wort into a vessel, then you're effectively sanitizing that vessel. So as long as your cleaning practices are pretty good and you rinse that vessel out, maybe you sanitize it a little bit. I'm not particularly sure if people do that just to be safe or if they, rely on the temperature of that wort to sterilize the vessel. But effectively, if you force all of the air out of the vessel or out of the cube, and then pump hot wort into it, you are doing a pretty good job sanitizing. If the seal is good, you could probably let that sit for quite a while.
Yeah, right. You mentioned a little bit, I just want to give a little warning. You mentioned about the material that's used for these no-chill, the method. You can't use glass. The heat shock probably will break the glass if you're putting 212 degree or 100 degrees Celsius, whatever it is, wort into a glass carboy. There's a good chance that you're going to get cut. In the same way, you don't want to rack this hot wort over to a 6-gallon PET carboy either. It will collapse on you. I've seen so many pictures online of people who have tried to do this. You have to find a material, a vessel that is heat rated and that is food safe. There's some argument about the food safeness of HDPE, but I think with anything like this, we're taking small risks. And I believe it was on Basic Brewing Radio. They had a toxicologist come on and talk about how it's really not that unsafe to use HDPE for such a process. So make sure that you're finding the right materials. The jerry can that I borrowed from a good buddy of mine who was doing no chill, and you can find them. I think they're like $15 on Amazon.com, something like that. They work really well, doesn't deform at all, and really easy to clean out when you're done using it. So make sure you get the right thing. All right, so when it comes to no chill, the no chill method, there are a lot of the pros we've kind of talked about. It's really simple. It does work. You can store wort for a while. There's a lot of good sides to it, good stuff about it. But there are a lot of cons that people talk about as well.
There are. And I think the two biggest ones, in my opinion, that you hear people talk about are going to be cold break and utilization of hops. So kind of that first thing is like we've talked before about the utilization of hops being that around 175 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 79 degrees Celsius, is when hops begin to isomerize, where the acids in hops actually become more soluble for the wort and they contribute bitterness. Because you're pumping wort directly into a vessel while it's boiling and letting it air cool, you are letting the wort stay at a temperature that's above isomerization for a longer period of time. So if you have, a 0 minute or a 5 minute hop addition, that might actually be something like a 45 minute to a 4 hour addition, depending on how long it takes you to cool down that wort. So IBUs is definitely one of those things that I see all the time, that people say that, some brewers will actually dial back their IBUs on a beer because they know that by utilizing that no-chill method, they're going to get more IBUs out of those additions.
Yeah, in fact, there are charts available online, easy to find, that help no-chill brewers determine what type of hopping changes to make based on the fact that they're using this method.
That second problem that we talked about is that the risk of no-chill brewing actually means that you will not typically get a cold break. So cold break is pretty interesting because it's one of the things I think we're all aware of as brewers, but we don't really talk about too often. When people are talking about their process, we talk about mash temperature a lot. We talk about fermentation temperature a lot, but are you getting a good cold break? Are you getting a good hop break? That's way more out there. We do talk about trub a bit in terms of in terms of from the boil kettle to the fermenter, but the cold break's actually a part of that. So what happens when wort is really rapidly chilled, utilizing some of those, chilling methods we talked about previously, it helps compounds that cause off flavors and like a bunch of proteins kind of bind together and drop out of the solution. Obviously, because the wort is colder, there can't be as much in the solution. It's becomes it's more difficult for things to settle to stay in it. So as things settle out and you separate the wort from that hot break and that cold break, you get rid of a lot of those compounds and proteins that cause off flavors later in the solution. So DMS precursors would be one of those.
That's a big one that I've heard about is the increased risk of dimethyl sulfide being in the beer when using the no-chill method.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, where normally you'd have DMS boil off or you'd do a cold break and it would start to drop out of the solution. But by keeping that, you obviously still are going to boil a lot of it off during this method, but then you rack that beer into a sealed vessel where if it's still at those temperatures, it might steam, but it's going to recondense into the wort, because where else is it going to go? So it stays in that. So that's definitely one of the concerns. And kind of coupled with that is actually the increased possibility for chill haze. So, like for people who want crystal clear beer, for people who are really concerned about the remaining proteins in their beer, by sealing that all up, all those proteins actually stay in there. And chill haze, it needs to normally be thermally shocked out of the wort via those chilling methods. But if you cool really slowly, then you're not going to really do much to those proteins. And when you chill your beer for drinking, they're going to precipitate out of the beer and form a haze. So your beer is going to get a lot cloudier. As the beer warms up, it'll clear up a little bit more. Those proteins will redissolve into the solution, but you could be dealing with chill haze because you're keeping your beer on all those proteins.
Yeah, and just based on anecdote and pictures I've seen of people who use the no-chill method, that does seem to be an issue. Some experience, though, using proper fining techniques and whatnot,
yes,
it seems
absolutely.
like it can definitely be combated pretty well. Another potential downside to no-chill that I've read about is the risk of contamination, and that makes sense, right? You're transferring warm wort without yeast into a container. There's a possibility, even if it's really hot, there is a possibility of contamination from that.
Absolutely.
But in particular, one particularly terrifying risk is that of botulism.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So obviously one of the problems is that botulism, a foodborne toxin, is that when you ingest that, like it can cause very serious illness. It can be fatal. And usually that's totally fine when you heat a food more than 185 degrees Fahrenheit or 85 degrees Celsius for longer than 5 minutes. So in our wort, and obviously in our cleaned and sterilized vessels, that's usually not much of a problem. But when you are like you said, like if you put warm wort into a container that hasn't been properly sanitized, and you're kind of just relying on the heat to solve that problem, you may not get everything, you may not destroy everything or all toxins that are present. And botulism is a major concern. Like that would definitely be something that, usually we talk about infected beer as, it might go sour and it probably won't be bad for you, but there's definitely a possibility for some more serious problems.
Right, and in typical quick chilled brewing methods, what we're doing is pitching our yeast with enough time that it drops the pH of the beer low enough to where it's botulism doesn't favor that environment.
Right.
That all being said, and not trying to be catastrophists here, I have yet to hear of a single incident of a no-chill brewer coming down with botulism. So I don't think there's much to worry about. It's worth being concerned about. Make sure you're doing things, as cleanly as possible, and that you're storing the wort well, and that everything's sanitized. And I think you will probably be fine. So there's really, as far as I could tell, there's really not much research on the impact of no-chill brewing. And so, we kind of approached it somewhat blindly, just basing it off of what we read online. And I had a good friend, Aaron Collier, who lives here in Fresno. Unfortunately, he's had to kind of bow out of beer drinking due to health reasons. But a couple years ago, he decided to do a very interesting experiment where he converted to strictly no-chill brewing, but he didn't tell any of us. And when we get back from this break, we're going to go over some of his experiences and what we thought about that, as well as dig into another experiment that I did as follow-up. If, like me, you prefer the simpler side of brewing beer, you have got to check out the Brew Bag, a food-safe fabric filter that allows for mashing of the finest crushed grain without risking the dreaded stuck sparge. I've been recommending these things since I started using them. They are awesome. The Brew Bag offers the only completely reinforced fabric filter for brewing that can be used over 100 times and comes in sizes that fit most mash tuns, or you can even have one custom made. Go check the Brew Bag out at brewinabag.com and be sure to use promo code TBP17 to get 10% off your order of $30 or more. So a few years ago, my buddy Aaron, he was brewing a bunch of beers, and he had this big setup. I think a lot of us kind of go through this, where he had built up this huge system with all these pumps and just a really convoluted brewing process. And he kind of came to a point where he realized it was just too much for him, and he wanted to simplify his process a bit. Well, in his research on how to make things a little bit easier on the brewing side of life, he discovered no-chill, and he read some articles on it, thought it sounded like a really good thing for him. But, being concerned what his brewing mates like us would think, he decided to keep this transition in his brewing a secret from us, which I only learned about.
That sounds like Aaron.
Yeah, which I thought it was kind of a neat idea. And his reason for doing that was because he wanted to get the most objective feedback from us friends, most of whom are BJCP judges, without us knowing what he changed in his process. So he didn't actually tell us about any changes. He just kept brewing like usual, and we'd get together and we'd have these beer shares, and so he gleaned his feedback that way. Again, I thought it was a lot of fun. We ended up writing an article on it. If you search for no chill at Brülosophy.com, you'll see a year of no chill, and that's the article going over all of his experience. I'm going to touch on some of the stuff. When he first started, the first beer he made was an English mild, and he made it for a local competition that all of us friends ended up entering. And his mild, using this no-chill process, which involved racking post-boil wort, so when it's still above 200 degrees, into a clean, and he would sanitize, I believe, cube that he found on Amazon.com, and then storing it overnight, racking that wort into a standard fermenter, pitching yeast, and then proceeding as usual. This mild that he made using that method took second place in a competition that I think something like 15 or 20 people entered. Even I entered it. I don't quite remember what my score was, but so he did that. Now, mild is a recipe known for being pretty low on the bitterness scale, pretty mild in terms of hops in general. A relatively malty style, low in alcohol. The beer, as far as I can tell, or as far as I can recall, was very good. I mean, it scored a 40 points in this competition. I recall enjoying it and going back for seconds when he was serving it to us. And so he was feeling, this was a promising transition that he'd made. He went on to brew a couple more malt-forward beers, a chocolate stout and a Belgian double. Both of them came out without any of the off flavors that you might expect, based on the potential cons that we discussed earlier. He was really excited, was feeling that this was going to be a good move for him. And then he made his first hoppy beer. It was a kind of a pale ale, yeah. And when he made that beer, his impressions were that, and I believe what he did is he made like a Janet's Brown Ale clone, which is really like a brown IPA, if that's a thing. Really, it's a really great beer. I've had it at Russian River, and I've had plenty of really well done homebrewed versions. Well, he made his, and the kind of overarching feedback that he received from all of us, again, who were unaware of his approach, was that it was just overbearingly bitter.
Yeah, and I think that would be pretty I think that'd be pretty in line with what we would expect from, a more conventional approach to the method. Would that, being above those isomerization temperatures, they would get more bitter, and you'd have, a little bit more perceptible bitterness and maybe even a little less flavor and aroma.
Yeah. And well, he made a couple more hoppy beers, not really accounting for the longer contact time of the hops with that hot wort, and was equally as disappointed. These beers were coming back. He used the term hop astringency, which that's, interestingly enough, is a term that Brian Hall uses as well to explain, a bitterness that's not just bitter, but kind of is almost like mouth coating and really gets you in the jowls type of thing.
Yep.
And so that's how Aaron experienced his Imperial IPA and all of these other hoppy beers he'd been making. And then he ultimately stumbled on a chart, kind of explaining, going over the way you can do different hop additions to adjust for that longer contact time of the hops with the wort. And it seemed like his beers were getting better.
I mean, like a lot of people make those adjustments based on, how long that contact time is going to be, and just it's kind of the same as some of our other brewing practices where we just kind of, perpetuate knowing your system, and knowing the process you're using and adjusting based off of your flavor preferences and based off, what capability you have.
Yeah. And while making this adjustment, made his beers that kind of reduced some of that hop astringency. I do recall him saying that he, and this was a long time ago. I don't necessarily remember how all of these beers tasted, but his experience was that regardless of the adjustments that he made, the beers seemed to kind of maintain this grassy vegetal character to them. I remember in the brewer's thumbprint experiment that we did a while back, his beer had this kind of hay-like flavor to it that none of the other beers had. And he had made, that beer using the no chill method. So, what he ended up settling on was that this was a great method for him, at least a great method for more malt forward beers. But that he wasn't a huge fan of the hoppier styles that he was making using the no chill method. And moreover, a lot of his beers lacked the clarity that he expected to get out of things, but he was able to find that using gelatin, really seemed to help that out. So it was a really interesting year for him, an interesting experiment for all of us. When he revealed it to us, we were all kind of like, "What?"
Yeah, I mean, and also that's just dedication. I mean, I can't think of many brewing processes that I've done experimentally that I've implemented for a year, unless it's something that I kind of said like, this is going to be a change.
No. Yeah, it was really cool. And interestingly, he stuck with no chill brewing for those maltier beers for a while. And but it wasn't too long after that experiment that he did, where he again, like I said, due to medical reasons, he had to start drinking not beer, unfortunately. But thanks for Aaron for doing that. And it definitely inspired a follow-up experiment that is more in line with our traditional approach. And in this one, what I did is I wanted to see if people would be able to distinguish two beers. One of them, where the only difference between them is one was quick chilled and one was no chilled. Pretty simple design. What I did is I picked up a couple of our Brülosophy Hellas recipe kits from lovetobrew.com, a fantastic recipe kit, if I do say so myself. What I did is I made a batch of beer, split them between, or I split the two. One of them, there were two batches of beer, same exact recipe kits, so they were brewed, using the same exact procedures and whatnot. Everything about them was the same. I brewed them up. One of them got chilled really quickly with a King Cobra copper immersion chiller. I think it was about 5 minutes and it was already at 82 degrees or so. That's 27, 28 degrees Celsius. And then the other one, when the beer was still nice and hot, I racked it into a cleaned and sanitized cube, which I'd received from Aaron after he stopped brewing. And I still have that cube for future experiments, should we ever get to it. And I racked it into there, filled it all the way to the brim, capped it off, and I set it in my garage. I didn't want to give it any, I didn't want to speed up the process at all. So instead of putting it in my nice, cool fermentation chamber, I just set it in my garage and let it cool itself off. for about 24 hours, I think. I left the quick chill wort alone. I wanted both of the beers to be pitched at the same time, so that wasn't a variable. So the quick chill wort got covered, the carboy got covered with foil and stuck in my fermentation chamber and just sat there for a day or so until the no chill batch was ready to be pitched. Once they were both to the same temperature, I racked the no chill wort into the same 6-gallon PET carboy. Set the two next to each other in the same fermentation chamber, which I believe was regulated to 60. Pitched the yeast, same amount of yeast into each one, and let them ferment. They both fermented out pretty quickly, about the same. The quick chill batch finished at about 10 FG, while the no chill batch finished at about 11. That's one of those things I don't really chalk up to a function of the variable. That just seems to be something that can happen. I mean, a 0.001 SG difference doesn't seem really all that significant to me.
Yeah, I mean, we could test that in the future.
Yeah, see if it's something that is consistent. Yeah, that's a good point. When the beers were done fermenting, though, and the FG was consistent over a few days, I cold crashed them, fined them with gelatin, racked them into kegs, and carbonated them. After about a week or so in the Keezer, it was time to collect data. So for this one, what I did is I served the beers to 22 participants. At 22 participants, we would need 11 to indicate significance. So 11 of those 22, exactly half, would have to correctly identify the odd beer out in order for us to say that the beers were qualitatively different enough for a reliable number of participants to distinguish them. In the end, a whopping 14 tasters were able to make the accurate selection, which indicates that the quick chill beer was reliably distinguishable from the no chill beer. That is interesting to me because the argument is often made that you can use the no chill process and it doesn't have a impact on the flavor or aroma or mouthfeel of the beer, and these results seem to kind of contradict that.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely interesting, and what I thought was incredibly interesting about the experiment was that despite people reporting that they did notice a difference between the flavor and aroma in the beer, they actually didn't really talk about a difference in bitterness.
Yeah, bitterness wasn't one of the things that they pointed out as being, the defining characteristic of the no-chill beer. Interestingly enough, it was nearly half of the tasters endorsed the quick chill beer. So six of the participants liked the quick chill beer more; they preferred it. Another 6 liked the no-chill beer more, and 2 said that the beers were different, but they didn't really have a preference. So that to me speaks volumes because it doesn't.
Absolutely.
Even though a variable might, cause a difference or impart some sort of a qualitative difference, that doesn't necessarily define preference, right? People's preference is subjective, and the fact that the same amount of people preferred either of those beers says a lot. And really, to me, says if you want to try this out, you might actually like it more. And if you don't, you can go back to quick chilling. When asked which beer was produced using the no-chill method, we used to ask this question a lot. We don't really anymore, but 7 actually chose the correct beer. They were able to say that 7 of the correct tasters of the 14 correct tasters thought the no-chill beer was the no-chill beer, and 7 chose incorrectly. So the other half chose the quick chill beer as the no chill beer, which to me only says that they may not really know what to expect out of a no chill beer. But I went over them what to expect, and particularly with the bitterness thing. And it was interesting to me, those findings. So when I did my own triangle tests, I only failed 1 out of 6 of the trials, and it was a late Saturday night. I'd had a few drinks. To me, I remember these being very easy to distinguish, and to me, what really made the no chill beer different was what I think what Aaron had previously described, and it's this wet hay character that I got from the no chill batch, it's not like. It wasn't like walking into a barn or anything like that, but when drinking it, there was just this kind of dry, grassy type of smell and flavor that I got from the no-chill beer. Not terribly unappealing, but in my opinion, not what I expect from a nice, clean, lager beer, or really any type of beer.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience with no-chill brewing?
I do. So before I started using the exCHILLerator, and right before that, I was using a stainless steel immersion chiller. I actually went through quite a long period, probably 6 months, 8 months, of only using the no-chill method. So I ferment in pinlock kegs, and typically I'll do 4.5 or I'll do 5 gallon batches for us, but 4.5 gallon batches, and use I have dedicated fermenting kegs that are stainless steel. So before I was like, I'm not chilling really effectively with these water baths. It took a long time. It was pretty detrimental. It was way easier for me to just rack the beer directly into a stainless steel fermenter and let it chill for the given period of time in the fermentation chamber, and usually pitch the following morning. So it would take about 24 hours, or 18 hours, depending on when I was brewing that day, to get to my pitching temperature, and pitch my yeast. So during my experience, I actually noticed a lot of things similar to what Aaron noticed in his brewing, that I would brew oatmeal stouts, or a dry stout, or something like a mild, where I had it was a really good experience. I thought it was a great beer. I thought there wasn't really a huge difference between my previous methods, which admittedly were also a pretty slow chill, though definitely faster than what I was experiencing with no chill. But then like the hoppier beers, and even beers that just had a lot of hops in it, like an imperial stout where you're looking at like 80 to 90 IBUs, I definitely perceive those beers as being hoppier than I expected, with a more muddied flavor to it. Like definitely like the hop flavors that were present weren't as sharp as I would expect them in something like a double IPA. And so my experience varied, but I did it for a really long time. I really enjoyed the beers. I won a couple medals. Like one was a Flanders Red that did really well in the fermenter as a no chill. So I think it can be done. There's something to it, and you got to dial in your system to do it, I think, effectively, like you would with any system, but there's a lot of value there. When it comes to stuff like this, when a variable does at least seem to make a difference, or as compared to some other more accepted method, people are constantly asking, well, what's better? And I think, particularly with things like no chill, it really depends on what's better for you and for each individual brewer. And, talking to these dudes in Australia and New Zealand as well about how they're able to continue brewing pretty often because they've, adopted this method. I mean, that's awesome. And they're making great beer. I had a lot of homebrew in both of those places that were no chill, and they were great. It's not that it's bad, just because it's different. And I think that's something that the big takeaway here is if you're looking for a way to cut some time out of your brew day, this might be, an awesome option for you that allows you to keep brewing. Did you ever do any comparisons, like side by sides, with a beer that you quick chilled compared to no chill? Or do you have any recollections of how one recipe that you've made numerous times tasted when using no chill as compared to a quick chill? Absolutely. I can only say it once. So I actually have never done a side by side. And that's something that I would definitely be interested in doing in the future, now that I am obviously chilling much more efficiently. The one thing that I have noticed a difference in is I brew a lot of Czech Pilsners, and I have actually a consistent recipe that hasn't really changed in a long time that I really enjoy, and I've made that where I can honestly say the only difference was whether or not I was doing a cold or doing a quick chill or doing a no chill, and I found the quick chill batch to be a little sharper in hop character. The overall malt character was much lighter. It had more of like a bready characteristic to it. It was cleaner than something that like the no chill batch, which, like you mentioned, I wouldn't quite say wet hay character, but definitely it felt like a heavier kind of bready character to it, and maybe like a little more raw character to it than the other did.
Maybe that's, maybe that's what it is. Another person described one of Aaron's beers, I recall, as being like raw dough, like bread dough.
There you go.
And I think, when I think of wet hay, sort of what I'm thinking of is like when you take, like a wheat you got like wheat stalks that are kind of wet, kind of a wet flour, wet doughy thing. That to me, they all kind of are in that same realm, and that is the experience I had with the beer I made as well.
So yeah, and I think, I mean, kind of like you actually mentioned, like the preferences split. I never thought those beers were bad. Definitely those hoppier beers, I would lean away from them and think like, maybe maybe I needed to dial back the hops on this one. Maybe I need to do something else. But I definitely I still, all those Pilsners, I still enjoyed them. I still thought they were good.
Yeah. And I like I said, man, there are people who are making beers using the no-chill method that are winning awards. You've done that. And it's just a matter of preference and what works best for each individual brewer. We talk about efficiency and looking at, I rely on the chilling method that I do because to me it's efficient, and my focus there is on time. It's efficiency of time. I'm able to chill this wort in 5 to 15 minutes, depending on my batch size, get it in the fermenter, pitch my yeast, and move on with my day. That's my version of efficiency. Some would argue that no chill brewing is way more efficient because all you're doing is racking warm wort into a vessel, capping it off and storing it. At the same time, they're saving, where they've got us is that they're not using any water to chill this wort. They are conserving all of that water, which in certain areas that is a very important thing. And in fact, right here in Fresno, we had restrictions on our water usage a couple of years ago because of a drought. And in that time, it is more beneficial to somebody. You're going to be able to brew more beer without getting in trouble from the city,
right? Absolutely,
or getting nasty looks from your neighbors. Running good water essentially down the driveway. So it's a neat method for that type of efficiency, and for those who are looking to increase their output without increasing the amount of work that goes into each brew day. You going to be no chilling anytime soon?
If we decide to revive this experiment, I will. No, for now, I've been having really great experiences with the exchillerator, and I really like the convenience of being able to pitch my yeast sooner, because it's really exciting for me to wake up and see fermentation activities happening the next day.
Isn't it amazing after so long how like seeing Krausen formation still makes you kind of giddy?
Yeah, it's nice. It's exciting. I look at it and I'm like, oh, thank God I did this correctly. Like even now. But yeah, so I probably don't have plans to do it anytime soon, but, at the same time, like going to homebrew club and stuff and talking with new brewers all the time. I mean, I do it constantly, and a lot of them are saying like, look, I just don't want to drop $40, $50 on an immersion chiller. I don't want to drop $200 on a more advanced chiller. And I'm more confident after that period of time where I was no chilling to say like, you got options. There's other things you can do. So it's all about knowing the system. And I definitely wouldn't rule it out in the future.
No, and I'm right there with you. If using no chill is going to get somebody into the hobby and get them brewing more, by all means, go do. As for me, I will be sticking with my immersion chiller because it's what I know and it's what works for me, and it's actually produced the beer that I tended to prefer a little bit more. Well, that's all I've got on no chill brewing. Matt, you got anything else?
No, I think we're set, Marshall.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you want more of them, you can head over to brülosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can help us out. And don't forget to check out the rewards you can get for supporting us at patreon.com/brülosophy. If you have any questions you want answered on a future Brew and A episode, you can email them to marshall@brülosophy.com. Or if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, you can ask us there too. If you'd be so kind as to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, we would really appreciate it. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with the next episode of the Brülosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey cause it soothes my throat. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more.